Nashville Public Radio serves Middle Tennessee in many ways every day, including through this podcast. You can support it by leaving a review or rating, by telling a friend about it, or by contributing at WPLN.org/give.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's June 23rd, 2025. On this day in 1952, an 8-day, 100-degree streak began in Middle Tennessee. That means from June 23rd to June 30th, the temperature high was in triple digits. That summer, 1952, was one of the hottest on record for the state. And on June 23rd in 2025, we can relate. Tennessee is one of more than a dozen states that are under a heat advisory. Today's high isn't quite breaking that 100-degree barrier, but it is in the mid-90s. I'm Cynthia Abrams, in for Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. In just a few minutes, we'll hear about one of the most well-known ultramarathons in the world, which just so happens to be here in Tennessee. The Barkley Marathons is essentially 5 marathons pieced together and sometimes has 0 finishers. That's coming up after the newscast. Here's the latest from WPLN News. A federal judge in Nashville has ruled that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongly deported to El Salvador, can be released on bail. But that doesn't mean he'll go free while he awaits trial on human smuggling charges. Officials say Abrego Garcia will likely go into ICE custody instead. In her ruling, the judge writes that the government failed to prove that Abrego Garcia was a flight risk. Prosecutors say that Abrego Garcia smuggled people without legal status for the MS-13 gang. The defense says that the charges are to distract from the lack of due process in the man's high-profile case. The conditions of his release will be discussed at a hearing Wednesday. Abrego Garcia has also shifted to a new legal defense team. Instead of 4 appointed federal public defenders, his new defense is led locally by Rasco Dean, a former top federal prosecutor in the state, and a trio of attorneys at a high-profile New York firm. Bonnaroo ticket holders will now receive a full refund for the music festival, which was canceled due to flooding. Officials had initially said it would refund 75% of the ticket cost, but reversed course on Friday. Bonnaroo has not yet confirmed if there will be a makeup concert in the future. The Metro Nashville Police Department's nearly year-long investigation into the city's civil rights-era bombings has uncovered new information that points to the identity of a possible suspect. 2 days before civil rights attorney Z. Alexander Luby's home was bombed in 1960, a photograph of a school-aged girl was found at the scene of a burglary in nearby Clarksville, where a large quantity of dynamite had been stolen. A cold case unit detective identified the girl in the photograph, who is now 75 years old. She says her uncle was, quote, racist and very prejudiced. He died in 1984 at the age of 63, and little information was found to place him in Tennessee during the attack. However, it was a known tactic for the KKK to involve an out-of-town arsonist to throw off police investigations. Starting July 1st, Tennessee will become the first and the only state in the South to protect fertility treatments such as IVF and birth control. The proposal was nearly derailed, but in the end received bipartisan support among progressive groups and conservative Republicans who have benefited from the use of IVF. Vanderbilt University Medical Center has provided more details about the impacts of federal cuts. The hospital will lay off up to 650 people, or 2% of its workforce. Most of the layoffs are workers in research, administration, and support areas. VUMC will cut operating costs by more than $300 million. The staff reductions are mainly the result of cuts to government-funded research and patient care. The hospital says those laid off will receive severance packages and assistance. The cuts are expected to continue through June 27th. More than half of the nation is experiencing the summer's first heat wave. Dangerous heat set in yesterday in Middle Tennessee, with the heat index exceeding 100 degrees in some places. WPLN's Caroline Eggers says Nashville could get a head start in racking up heat advisories.
In the past 10 years, Nashville has averaged about 5 heat advisories per year. The city had 7 last year and 8 in the 2 years before that. Nashville rarely gets heat warnings for the actual temperature. Dangers are usually tied to humidity, which raises the heat index. A heat index of at least 105 triggers an advisory. The high humidity now is thanks to moisture blowing up from the Gulf of Mexico, and that is amplifying a heat dome, an area of high pressure in the upper atmosphere that traps heat and humidity.
Nashville is expected to continue experiencing high heat risks for the next few days. The city is under a heat advisory until 7 p.m. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. June is Global Running Month, and for some, this celebrates the love of running ultramarathons. And some do their ultra running in the hills of East Tennessee at a world-famous race called the Barkley. The latest episode from the Niche to Meet You podcast covers this race and why anyone does it at all. Here's contributor Leslie Eiler-Thompson.
For some folks, running provides not just exercise, but mental health support. Some people even like running for tens of miles longer than a marathon, and these kinds of races are called ultra marathons. And these are what I thought I was going to be telling you about when I drove into the mountains of East Tennessee in March this year for the Barkley. But I was so wrong. The Barkley is about something completely different from an ultramarathon. It's about myth, mystery, lore, and about quests to conquer the unconquerable. Because the Barkley itself is more than just an ultramarathon. It's a legend. Much like Moby Dick is more a legend than he is a character. And actually, Herman Melville's novel is an apt comparison to this race. Some have even called the Barkley the white whale of Tennessee. They even say it's less ultramarathon and more akin to...
This is an experience of suffering in the woods.
This is Mack Cantrell. It's his second year doing the Barkley. And this is an experience of suffering because it's like 5 marathons back to back, done within 60 hours total. And the elevation change, it's like doing Mount Everest 2.5 times. But here's where it gets even crazier. The loops themselves are said to be 20 miles each by the creator. But
the loop has been 20 miles since 1986.
This is Tim Waz. He's a former runner, but for this event, he's on somebody's crew.
He adds to it every single year, but it's always been exactly 20 miles. It's always been 20 miles with, the same elevation change.
It must be the magic of the Barkley.
It's the magic of the Barkley.
The creator of the Barkley goes by Lazarus Lake. His real name is Gary Cantrell, no relation to Matt. He's like the Captain Ahab of the Barkley marathons, and due to his genius in creating barely finishable races, only 17 people have completed the Barkley since 1986. Now, the quirks of the race are endless. There's the secrecy of the map, or how the books are used as checkpoints, with runners asked to tear out pages as proof they didn't cut corners. Even the 1-hour race start warning by the blowing of a conch shell. It's all been told before in documentaries and articles like in The Guardian and The New York Times. These are all the workings of Laz, who starts each race with a 10-second countdown.
10 seconds.
And then the race officially begins with, I'm not kidding, the lighting of a cigarette, an annual tradition. And by the end of this year's race, his course would be the winner. There were no finishers in the 2025 Barkley. What can be learned from something so ridiculous? And what compels the runners to keep coming back? The answers are found in the mind of Lazarus himself. He's from Bell Buckle, Tennessee, and organizes races with human psychology in mind, specifically to push people to their limits but for a purpose.
When they come back and they have failed, as most of them are going to fail, some of them will fail spectacularly. All they're thinking in their mind is, how do I get past that? Whatever it was that stopped me this time, how do I overcome that?
Comparing Laz to Captain Ahab is appropriate to a point. He's leading his crewmates on a journey to conquer something that will likely undo them. But instead of doing it for hate's sake, like Ahab, he does it for the opposite reason. For goodness sake. The sake of accepting the failures of life and working to overcome them. And that is inspiring people, even beyond the trail.
People will say, I did such and such, something totally unrelated to running. Said, I watched that and I see these people, they're the best. And yet they're willing to go into a situation where they'll probably fail. And I thought, why can't I try? You know, they have something they wanted to do, but they're afraid to try for fear of failure. Yeah. If you aren't willing to fail, you can't succeed.
I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that our niche interests can provide a safe environment for us to practice this concept, too. Whether you're physically uncomfortable while doing them or not. Here's Matt again.
You certainly don't have to be a trail runner to strive for physical exertion and stretching yourselves. But there's all sorts of ways that we can stretch ourselves in the real world universally, for sure.
These things that we do to fill our time for fun or for physical and mental health also have the ability to teach us, surrounded by community. Teach us things like resiliency, perseverance, even when faced with failure, because, like Ahab, we all have our white whale. But it matters that we chase after it, for goodness sake alone.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at wpln.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.